Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today we've got Larissa Bolivar joining us from Oklahoma, a 20-year cannabis activist here. Larissa, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Caleb, for having me.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I believe we just kind of met on Twitter, maybe, but I really enjoyed some of your comments. Before we get into any of that, would you mind sharing your 5-minute life story with us, or
Sure.
15 or half an hour?
I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible.
Yeah, please.
I just recently moved to Oklahoma from Colorado, where I moved to Colorado in 2001 from the DC area. I was born in Washington, DC, and grew up in Northern Virginia and also in the DC area. Started consuming cannabis then, decided to move to Colorado in the late 90s. When my ex-husband had moved there, he was actually my weed guy, and he moved to Colorado to grow weed and then convinced me to move there. So I moved to Colorado in 2001. My name used to be Larissa Lawrence. And then I started working with Ken Gorman, who helped get Amendment 20 passed. He was the figurehead, if you will, who got that done. No worries. And but he was the person that, the poster, if you will, of cannabis legalization. He helped get the 100,000 signatures necessary for medical marijuana. And then he and I together helped shepherd the first few thousand patients through the registry. He's the founder of the 420 rally, which is really critical. It's a rally that used to gather thousands of people. He started it in the mid-90s. And so it, blew up to something massive, which then it was a political rally. There's still a 420 rally today, but that's run by Flora. We were kind of like the Boston Freedom Rally. We were similar to that, but the Denver cohort. And so we were a political rally practicing civil disobedience. And then the city of Denver forced us to become a festival, which, makes things different. And that meant that we needed an attorney to help protect people, because then when it's a civil disobedience, it's hard to arrest people because it's a violation of First Amendment. But if it's a festival and people are partying, then they're subject to things like the Rave Act or, any type of laws.
Oh, weird.
So that's why Ken wasn't organizing back in the 90s, because of the Rave Act. And so, but we still kept it a political rally, but it didn't get, it got more organized. He was murdered actually in 2007, which I'm writing a book right now on our story. And then mine and his and my, our story on the activism side.
It sounded like the details of that murder were kind of sketchy.
It's a cool case, and that's why I say it kind of, cynically and almost chuckling, because, Ken was one of my very best friends and a mentor, and, his death left a power void in Colorado for sure. He was the person who could gather tens of thousands of people for a rally with just being on a radio show pre-social media.
And you said what? He was handing out free joints and everyone was having a good time. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so he started his rally at the Denver Capitol, the capital of Colorado, at the Capitol steps, handing out joints. He was working with a lady named Doreen Bishop, who then eventually would retire, and I kind of filled her shoes. And so, it was really rough in those years, from 2001 until, his murder, until 2008, when I left Colorado. Our lives were very dangerous. We had a lot of police activity. We were being raided all the time. I was an activist holding rallies at the federal building against cops because they were raiding patients for their 6 plants. So the cops didn't like us. And so when bad things happened to us, the cops made it a low priority to even help us or to investigate. So when Ken was murdered, they interviewed people in our circle. They didn't interview me. I wasn't even around at the time. They interviewed my ex-husband. Playboy wrote a complete smear article on my nonprofit. I was running it. It wasn't registered, but we had one of the first sales license for medical marijuana dispensary. And we operated it very much like a nonprofit. Every single penny went back to helping patients. And we dissolved that in 2008, and the Playboy article absolutely led to that. But
yeah, and I got a hold of that article, and it definitely. First of all, I wasn't aware that Playboy was doing journalism. Second of all,
they didn't even interview me.
Yeah, right. It seemed
and
very.
I'm the one who actually filed the paperwork for the cannabis or for the Colorado Compassion Club. I
It
have
seemed like
another
an irresponsible story to run, from
Totally.
my estimation.
Thank you for saying that, because Ken, when he was murdered, they interviewed all of these, people. They didn't, everybody was released as a suspect. And that Playboy article actually led to my ex-husband being interviewed twice, because, they literally made it like he was just trying to control a whole weed market, which if they would have interviewed me, they would have had a completely different story. Our biggest concerns were, how are we going to help all these people? We didn't have enough time or resources. So we were operating like a collective. And so we had other caregivers sign up with us, and then we would teach them how to grow and then just send them patients. We're like, okay, great, awesome, run with this. We don't care. Just help these people and do it, organically. They're sick and they need taken care of. And then, but see we just didn't fit the face of what they needed for adult use. I'm one of the first to do what I did. This is little one, Morgan, aka little one. She's
All right.
making her debut.
Cool.
We just moved, and so she's super nervous, and so she's
Yeah.
super clingy. Anyhow, so there was just, oh God, it's just so much ground to cover, and so appropriate today, because here I was an activist thinking I was doing everything right, and I didn't realize I was being discriminated against. In order to pass adult use in Colorado, they had to get law enforcement buy-in, they had to get the lawmaker buy-in, and then they had to get constituent buy-in, and they had to remove a boogeyman, black market element. And I didn't realize that I was that scapegoat. I was too naive. I was, in my mid to 20s to early 30s when all of this was happening. And I wasn't even a politically driven person when I started this. I was an activist, but not really politically savvy. I was pretty selfish when I was in Virginia. I was a recruiter making good money for the military industrial complex. I was even a registered Republican, which is embarrassing to admit, because I didn't even know that they were racist until I started being treated like shit. And they'd be like, clowning on me either because I was short or my last name. And, my dad's an immigrant from Peru. And I was like, oh God, I don't like this party. And so I left literally because, I just literally became liberal overnight. I don't even know how else to say it. I met sick people and they were broke because they were sick. And that just kind of shattered my worldview. And then when Ken Gorman taught me, I read The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and I was indoctrinated into cannabis, activism and hemp, hemp and marijuana. I saw that we had a lot of issues in our government, and that, this was more of a civil rights issue and a social justice issue. And I have a soft spot in my heart. My dad's an immigrant. I struggled as a kid. I know what it's like to go hungry, and I know what it's like to, I have a compassionate heart that way. Hence the Colorado Compassion Club. I was the one who named it. I even wrote a caregiver's creed that I can send you back then. But
well, that was my next note, was the Colorado Compassion Club. I had that in here. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, that was my, that was my vision. Everybody wanted to make it about my ex-husband. So women always don't really get the credit that's due. And, but that, I wrote a caregiver's creed because I really believed that what we were doing was the right thing to help sick people, to make sure that they had access to healthcare that was affordable, and to have a reliable continuity of care that they could afford, that was good quality. And so, that was just in my head. And, it was just so, we gumped most of those years. It wasn't necessarily a strategy or even we're going to strategize to take over the market. Of course, the other side that did take over would say that in the Playboy article, because that was their agenda. It's just projection. When I read the Playboy article now, it's talk about the bile that builds, because I'm just like, wow, I love me at least. Right. But it's really, my self-esteem is taking a huge hit. I can't even deny that. And so I left Colorado in 2008.
I'm still confused that Playboy was doing journalism. Like I was.
Well, you shouldn't be confused. You know why?
I thought they did stupid
Playboy
cartoons and titty pictures.
I'll clear it up for you and for your audience. Playboy founded Normal. Playboy funded normal start.
Which was another thing that I never knew, and I shared that with a couple other people, and they were also surprised to hear that. So that was, yeah,
They don't
thanks
like,
for that one.
yeah. It these we're talking about a very elite group of people, and I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I have a master's in public policy. They like to slander me as one, but I literally graduated with honors, and my concentration was in cannabis policy reform. And when I went back to Colorado in 2013 to do that work, these people attacked me nonstop. First there was rumors that I was there because I was banging the attorney that was managing. Well, I was managing the No on Proposition AA campaign, which was the anti, extortion taxes that that they put on marijuana, because I know my customers, I know patients. These people don't know poor people. I do. I know I watched my mom have to decide, on meals and what she could afford. I got free lunch. So I know how people have to budget that 15 to 30% tax dollars. But Mason Tvert refused to even debate me. He refused to even debate me. He debated the attorney on our team, Rob Corey, who was also the attorney for the Denver 420 rally, because I guess he's male and an attorney. But they never even valued my education. I had women from the Women's Normal Alliance, Rachel Gillette, and they're gonna hate me for even saying this but I don't care anymore. I really don't care anymore, because I'm watching our industry be hostily taken over by people who didn't dig the wells, and they could have played nice, but they chose not to, and they're not living in integrity, and I'm tired of being the scapegoat. But anyhow, when I first moved back to Colorado, I had people ask me when I was trying to join the Women's Normal Alliance if I was Rob Corey Jr.'s girlfriend. And I was like, no, maybe you should ask me for my resume first before assuming that I have to bang anybody to do what I do. I mean, it was hard enough to get into the school. I had to lobby them to even allow me to concentrate on cannabis. And here I was, I just moved back to Colorado. My last name was Bolivar, which is my maiden name. It's on my birth certificate. I went back to Colorado naively thinking that I would be welcomed with open arms as an activist, but all these doors were shut on me. And then that's when, I started wondering, is there a disconnect in the movement? And I should have seen it before, but again, I was too naive. And then that's when I started. So I committed my master's degree on figuring out exactly what did happen. Why is it so corrupt? And so now, I started working on that. But honestly, I ran out of funds. I mean, I just ran out. I mean, that's just a COVID hit. And so here I am now. I was running the Cannabis Consumer Coalition, which is a consumer advocacy watchdog. I just don't have time to even fundraise right now. I left Colorado. That's a whole other story, because
Didn't you say you had the long COVID?
Yeah, I can't get stressed. If I get stressed, I get sick. And so, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's been a nightmare, and very little support, because these folks, and there's a reason for it. There's the, was it New Horizon? I can't remember the PAC name, but I just tweeted about it too. But there's reasons why people like us who are the OGs, are the legacy people. And I'm 46. I inherited my activism from the people who started the movement, really. And so, but the idealists have been moved aside in place for business people, because there's this mentality that you have to be an MBA, or you have to do this, or you have to do that in order to be successful business owner. And that's what they want now in cannabis. But it's just the money. That's it. They just want the money.
I met plenty of guys that don't know shit about business that have been selling weed forever and seem to be doing pretty well at it.
Are you kidding me? A multi-billion-dollar illicit market. So these people had to rely 100% on guerrilla marketing. Like, seriously, they literally, it's like, how do you even start without going to jail? But they figured that out, and they kept it running. And you can't tell me they don't know how to run a profitable business. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
it's an excuse to take over the market, period.
And it does seem unfortunate that it seems like kind of with every new market, like what we see up front is just the private equity coming in and these big hedge funds positioning themselves to really, and people that have no interest in the market other than the money. They have no interest in the plant. They have no interest in the patients. They have no interest in the actual business. It's just another gamble for them, really.
It's another gamble. It's another revenue stream. It's just about making profit. I was on LinkedIn debating a CEO of a dispensary in Oregon, who does amazing business because she has boots on ground, knowing what consumers want. I'm like, yeah, that's just not what we wanted cannabis to be. Cannabis was started by the counterculture. It was started by people who wanted to destroy the status quo, because it does help you, open your mind and think more considerably of things around you. And when you start doing that, some things become less important than others. And but money, we all need it, and we all like to succeed. We all
Sure.
like to do good. So, but they're not giving us the opportunity to do that, and that's deliberate. So, and so we have normal, and we can compartmentalize that, but then we also have the marijuana policy project, and they didn't get started until
Yeah,
90.
please talk about
Yes.
them a bit.
Yes, because so Rob Campia used to be with normal. So there's a disconnect everywhere. So this is what happens when you're divided like this. This is how the big money people came in, and then everybody sold out, right? That's how it happened. But how, the steps to how it got there is really interesting. So marijuana policy project comes in. Rob Campia quits normal. They, make some sort of deal. He starts MPP in California right after medical. And so they start coming up with their own policies, and they can't do this without the support of the Democratic National Committee. The very rich people at the top, who then started taking over cannabis legalization started as a libertarian movement. It was, it was a very much hippie. It's not like the libertarians that people see today.
No,
They want,
it was the
to
true
see everything as
libertarians.
not. Yes, like when I call myself one, all I mean is I'm very progressive. But I don't want a huge government. I want the people to manage the government like it should be. And that's the kind of people who started the marijuana movement. These were my mentors. This is why I believe the way I do. And so, but and I haven't joined the Democratic Party officially. I did once to caucus for Bernie, but I haven't joined it officially because I didn't receive a warm welcome when I went back to Colorado when I was trying to. I really wanted to.
Really?
But the way, calling me, a woman who, what is that, a slut? I mean, I don't even know. What is it when a woman, has to sleep around to climb the corporate ladder? I actually work hard. My dad's an immigrant from Peru painter who like lifted himself up by the bootstraps when it was still possible in this country.
Yeah.
And, I watched him as an entrepreneur lift our entire family up. And so I went back to college and I worked and bust my ass for him. That's the man in my life that I work hard for. And so, to be insulted like that, was really just a turnoff. But then it started showing me the disconnect within the Democratic Party, which, that's a whole other show. But when you have AOC, Sanders, Warren, and then you have the Nancy Pelosi's of the world.
And we've got Joe Biden, who really wrote some of the most racist drug policy
Yes.
that we still lean on today, along with the
Yes.
Clintons and people like that.
Yeah. Now, doing a 180, or maybe like a 130 to 180 because they can't do it that fast, right? So they're just like, well, sentiment's changing. Right. Why not just have? We need to change the game. We need a whole new structure. We need term limits. We need these people out. We need people who actually will get the job done so that we can uplift the middle and lower classes. And I fully believe marijuana was going to be one of those ways, since it was the poor people relying on marijuana to make an income to begin with. But anyhow, so back to
it should be one of those ways. I agree with you. This could have been one of those things that like created sort of a level playing field where we all sort
absolutely of, yes. And I've been trying to be the voice for that, but people who need to launder their reputations, who didn't even grow up poor, are now dominating social equity policy. So there you go. We're dealing with a classist movement now, and that's a great segue back into MPP.
I love how you do your own segues here. This is nice.
Yeah, because this is a lot of information to try to condense and not sound like I'm sitting here on a whiteboard like
absolutely. It is a lot. There's on a spaghetti map, the connections are fucking endless.
They are. And so MPP comes in, and they with all the Democratic elite devise the tax and regulate model, which is a great model for Democrats, especially the neoliberals who know that they can do regulatory capture, not just working for government, but also starting the businesses necessary to supply the supply chain that's needed to support 400 to 1,000 pages of regulations, which is why you see these teams of lobbyists now working for businesses to do protectionism. It's everywhere now. But this all started with the tax and regulate model, which that's how they were like, okay, this is great. Here, everybody that's worried about losing the gravy train of marijuana arrests and convictions, why don't we do this instead?
Hmm.
So we're going to do a tax and regulate model, and we're going to make all, anybody who can afford to jump over these arbitrary hoops, some of them completely unconstitutional, like residency requirements, which violate the U.S. Sherman Act. But we're going to create all of these barriers, and they're going to have to be a millionaire, and they're going to have to show access to liquid capital, because everybody has hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around.
And if you go ahead and show that, aren't you kind of admitting that you've been a drug dealer the whole time and setting yourself up for maybe getting busted?
Well, I mean, when you're a venture capitalist backed legalization movement,
Right.
then
Well, that's
it's
fine.
the
But
venture capitalists
right.
writing that, and it's the business owners that already have that. But yeah, to me, yes, but that's why they put
right.
in
Some of these guys that wanted to come out, some of these guys, some of the black market guys that wanted to come out were very nervous about starting a business because they say, hey, aren't we now just admitting that we've made this money sort of illegally, even though that's what everyone's
weren't helping you.
Right.
So you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in security, but this is all by design, so this is why they made it, they decided to keep what they call undesirables out, which I don't appreciate being called an undesirable. I mean,
what does that even mean?
I think I'm desirable, and in many, not just even physically, but intellectually and even business wise, I bring value. And they decided that.
Who said that undesirable thing?
Samantha Walsh, a lobbyist in Colorado, said it, but she said that state lawmakers were trying to keep out undesirables, but see, they don't know who the undesirables are without the help of lobbyists. So we're not stupid, Right. I mean, it's not like the lawmakers are sitting there like doing their own work. They haven't for the longest time. The lobbyists have been doing all of their work. We all know this. This is not a conspiracy. So yeah, Samantha Walsh in the Colorado Sun, and I can send you the article. But yeah, it's pretty insulting to be called an undesirable of a market that you fucking created. Seriously, What the hell? Like, what the hell has happened to our movement? It makes me so mad. Anyhow, I mean, like everybody, I'm so mad all the time. I need to calm myself down so I don't choke out because it's just so disgusting and insulting. But anyhow,
I know you're very fired up about this, and
I am.
It's nice
I
because
almost died.
I feel like
almost died. My mentor was murdered. This is real for me. I had a home invasion. I called the police. You know what they told me? You have a Second Amendment right to make my day law. Good luck.
Oh.
I'm 5'2", 115 pounds. At the time I was 100 pounds. What the hell am I gonna do? Literally, these years were very dangerous, and you're just gonna swoop on in and take over and say thanks, bye. Really? Really? No, totally not cool. And I appreciate, Caleb, you giving me this platform to just really get this out. And this is the first time I've actually been able to get it out since I moved to Oklahoma, fleeing Colorado, fleeing the corruption.
Well, and one thing I really want to talk about is these consulting firms. I think that was really the number one thing you touched on that I would like to get after today, because these consulting firms are also operating here in Vermont. I think Vicente Strategy or Vicente Cedarberg.
Oh yeah, they're like the Koch brothers of weed, I like to say, because you know how the Koch brothers have all these different businesses.
Well, the Koch brothers have also been lobbying. They've also been lobbying in Vermont. Phil Scott has taken a number of donations from the Koch brothers.
Yes, they have. Absolutely, they have. And Koch brothers they've been working on drug policy too. If you follow the money, the Drug Policy Alliance was started by George Soros. You've got the Koch brothers who've been funding research, like at George Mason University, for example, in Virginia. They set up foundations, and then it's through these nonprofits that they start setting up as basically shell companies, and they put puppets in charge. That's called soft lobbying. So then they go in and they just start, instead of directly funneling money right to the lawmaker, they're now raising funds for these businesses, which I have witnesses. I mean, my Colorado Cannabis Consumers Coalition was supposed to be one of these things, but they couldn't control me. And this is the other reason why they hate me in Colorado. I was offered $30,000 to leave iComply, a company I work for now, owned by Mark Slaw, who's another person you should talk to. He is good. He's Brazilian and white. He's Latin American. His mom was an immigrant, and so that's why he has a European, I guess, last name. Anyhow, or white European. I don't know what to call it. Any non-Latin.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, right. And so some, but he's also mixed, and he was tokenized as well and led the Southern jurisdiction of Amendment 64 campaign, and then was left in the high and dry by Vicente Cedarberg. We do have a head of the snake. And so,
Can you talk about what you mean by that word tokenized, please?
so a token is someone who is picked to lead an organization, to be a voice and a face for an organization, but that's being powered by other people. So that's not an autonomous person. So I was approached to start the cannabis. I'm going to use the Cannabis Consumers Coalition as an example of how this happens. It's perfect, right? I was in college getting my master's in my 30s, getting my master's in public policy, and Samantha Walsh and Jason Wharf, two lobbyists, and my legal advisor Rob Corey from the Colorado Compassion Club. It's very confusing, but anyhow, they approached me to leave iComply, through which I was working on policy, mind you, which is already a threat, right? So I'm, sitting in for Mark at stakeholder meetings, and I'm pretty much a loose cannon at this point, for them. They can't control me. So they, working on policy, that's a threat for them. So they offer me the $30,000 to start the Cannabis Consumers Coalition. So naturally I quit. And when I told Mark I was quitting, he freaked out, and he literally came to my house and he was like, no, you can't. No, I need you. I'm building the company. I need my team. It's just not good timing. We'll put the Consumer Coalition under the iComply umbrella. And I was like, no, I really, I'm an ambitious woman. And I was like, no, really, I want to do my own thing, but I'll still help you from time to time. And he was like, yeah, but you can't trust Samantha Walsh and Jason Wharf. They've started other nonprofits and left people high and dry just so that they can do lobbying. This is a very important point right here. And I chose to ignore him because I also needed a seat behind the curtain. I'm not stupid. And so I let them think that that they could control me. And so I started the Consumer Coalition, left iComply, and then they reneged on the $30,000. Me, an immigrant's daughter, my family's working class, and they wanted me to start a consumer coalition so that I could be the counter voice against industry when they were being bad, so that they didn't have to be, so that they wouldn't lose their clients. So I basically was scapegoated again. I'm like, it's a theme in my life, trust me, it's in my book. And so, but I just ran with it, and I had a good run with it. I had a voice in Colorado. I was able to work in policy. Then Colorado Normal invited me on their board, and that kind of disempowered the Cannabis Consumers Coalition a little bit, but it gave me some more insight on how that organization works. And so, I just kind of went with it. But they absolutely tried controlling me. Jason Wharf even sent a letter out to lawmakers saying that they had created the Cannabis Consumers Coalition and hired me. And I was like, well, there wasn't a hiring process. I literally created the bylaws, wrote all the founding documentations, and got the 501c3 on my own. So I'm the founder. Nobody hired me, but they were trying to control me. And I have all the emails supporting this and all of it. So long story short, that's all, I left Colorado. But what they do with these soft lobbying, so a good example is even the United States Cannabis Council, with Toy Hutchinson. Who is she? Like, I don't remember her from the 90s and the early 2000s as an activist, but she's a VP for Curaleaf, and she's Black, and she has a degree from Harvard. So she makes a great face for Vicente Cedarberg. The United States Cannabis Council is nothing other than another Vicente Cedarberg franchise. And how they operate is literally like the Koch brothers. They've got Sensible, the Sensible group, which Brian Vicente started Sensible Colorado.
Sensible, yeah. And anytime I see that word, I believe you touched on this, but anytime I see that word sensible, I feel like there's some really nonsensical policies coming into play.
It's all psychology. It's all trying to lead people. It's marketing, but they're
it's smoke and mirrors, really, is what it looks like. Mirrors.
Yeah, sensible to them means keep out the undesirables.
And aren't those going to be a lot of like Black and brown people, realistically, at the end of the day? Yeah. Because at least from what I saw of Vicente Cedarberg here in Vermont, I don't think any of them are Black or brown. It looked like a lot of white people.
It is. It's all white people. It's all white people, and that's.
Didn't you say Cedarberg was a big lobbyist for oil and gas?
Yes, Christian Cedarberg moved over from oil and gas. I don't remember the name of the firm, but he was a lobbyist. He was a lawyer for a law firm that specified that, did public affairs for oil and gas, which is very important in Colorado because Colorado, one of their main sources of
I
income
was just gonna say that.
is oil and gas. So you had to get buy-in from the oil and gas industry for cannabis because they believe hemp is a threat. They want to control it.
We're still stuck in that old fucking paper.
We are.
Yeah, okay.
We
Wow.
are, we're moving a dinosaur. Cannabis was illegal for so long and other industries took over, which is why we all know why it was made illegal.
Yeah.
Well, now these industries have been able to operate for 80 years and they don't want to give away their gravy train, and they certainly don't want to give it to the people who dug the wells, and we're too poor to fight back. So to them, it's like taking candy from a baby. I mean, that's literally what they, that's how they act. That's the arrogance behind what they do. And lawmakers support this because they need the campaign dollars. So it's not even, we can blame Vicente Sederberg, we can blame all these greedy people, but really who's to blame are these lawmakers who are they're not genuine, and they don't believe in true social equity. They don't care really about the illicit market when we were trying to legitimize ourselves, whether it was on the transactional side or the producer side, and on the delivery side, and on the sales side. We wanted legitimacy, and this is what we were sold into, and this is why I signed up and put my neck on the line. And I don't have children, I don't have a retirement, I've committed my life to cannabis legalization, but as long as it's a populist movement. I did not risk my life for people who don't care if I don't wake up tomorrow. And that's what we're dealing with.
And that's what it feels like. And this is why I tried to get out of the bartending industry, because it felt like I was working with people that just didn't give a shit about me, no matter how hard I work or how hard I give a shit about your business. Like at the end of the day, they'll just fire you for any old reason. And that's why I tried to get out of that. And I thought cannabis would really be like an industry where maybe we see the opposite of that. We see people who actually give a shit because they've busted their asses for the last 30 years and ducked the cops and all of this. And then when you see these fucking hedge funds coming in and these fucking Chads and these Karens who really don't give a fuck about any of it, it's like, this was kind of like, maybe it seemed to me like, hey, this is one area where we could really fucking help people. And they immediately started letting these fucking private equity funds come in and just take over the whole game. And I'm like, okay, so how what's left really for regular people?
Well, social equity was the last hope, but then Vicente Sederberg stole that dialogue, and so did Normal. Normal teamed up with Minorities for Medical Marijuana. They take MSO money. And so,
and isn't there some states where they're saying, hey, if you attach yourself to this MSO, we'll let it
yes, absolutely.
Right.
Arizona is one. I actually went through the Consumer Coalition. We wrote, against voting for the adult use laws. I believe Nevada is another one. That whole area there is super corrupt. And
Nevada, is the heart of corruption.
It is. And yeah, it's just, and it's like it's like screaming in the wind. You know what I mean? It's so hard to get a voice out to constituents to just think critically. And MPP and Normal are exploiting consumer and voter Stockholm syndrome. We're tired of being arrested. We'll vote for anything at this point. Just leave us alone. And
however, in Vermont, they're now training new drug recognition experts. So we're not even going to get arrested less. It seems like they're going to bust. And I've seen other states. I feel like Pennsylvania was one where they said drug arrests have actually gone up after legalization, so.
Yeah. One of the venture, I have so much dirt from the early years of the Consumer Coalition, but there was a company called River Rock, who then became the U.S. Who are they? Cannabis Corporation, U.S. Cannabis Corporation, which Ernest Blackman and what's the other guy? John, I can't remember his last name. But anyhow, I'll send you all this information. Cool. But, these folks had a lot of connections with law enforcement on higher levels. So, there were, in the early years when I was getting my master's in public policy, there were stakeholder meetings all over the country. I even met and got to know former DEA intelligence heads because I was doing my own snooping around. Yeah, that's in my book. Oh my God.
I haven't got that close yet, but I'm getting there.
Oh, I wanted, like, when I wanted to dig for dirt, I dug dirt. And so, but there were all these people who were sitting at policy tables with all the elite making these decisions without us. We were literally just the voice that they needed to make the noise, but they were going to take over the whole time. I mean, that was, and they were going to make sure that everybody could still make money. I mean, when you look at the Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado, which was started by Wanda James, who gets a lot of leverage for and leadership for social equity, when she was the one who helped create the inequitable process to begin with. She was a fundraiser for Vicente Cedarburg. Her and her husband had a restaurant called Ocho Rios, and they raised money for Sensible Colorado and the Safer Campaign and MPP and Normal. And
didn't you say she was a big bundler for Obama?
Yeah, she was Obama's biggest bundler, which means she raised the most money for him in Colorado, and he appointed her to his finance committee. Vicente Cedarburg were all over her, and I actually asked her to interview for my master's thesis in 2015, which was enduring racial disparity after cannabis legalization. And she told me she was too busy, and then she went and got media for the issue instead. And so she took my thunder for my master's, and then started a rumor that I was faking my heritage. My birth certificate says Bolivar. My dad was stabbed when I was 4 years old and he lived, but that's my first drug trauma. And you're going to rob me of my voice and my trauma. She grew up privileged. Her mom's white British and her dad's in the military. And I don't begrudge her. I have friends that grew up privileged, but don't fucking take from the poor just so that you can have political capital. I was part of the 420 rally. That was the first social justice movement in Colorado that is now defunct. And Florida has a party now. There's no more actual social justice activism in Colorado. In Colorado, they treat me like I'm a bully. First of all, I'm too broke to be a bully. Who am I bullying? I'm 5'2". Because I'm loud and people listen to me, I resonate. That doesn't make me a bully, because there's so many other people that I'm speaking to because they feel the same way. I just have a voice and I'm not afraid to use it. And, it gets me in a lot of trouble. But at the same time, I don't like watching people suffer. And they just don't. I can't stand it. And, for me, this cannabis provided an opportunity to end suffering. And that was robbed from all of us. And now we get to watch these people pop champagne, sometimes cannabis infused champagne, in our faces. Yeah.
And I got to say, like, if for a lot of the talk that I've heard about social equity, at least in Vermont, like, there was no Black people on the board or the advisory committee.
No, it's actually industry making social policy, which shows a failure in democracy.
They talked a lot about
businesses making social policy. What?
They talked a lot about giving a leg up to these people that have been traditionally or historically marginalized, maybe, or negatively impacted by the war on drugs. Now I look around the room, I'm like, this is just a bunch of fucking white people. And not to say that white people have not been impacted by the war on drugs, because they absolutely have, and I have. But when I look around at these white people, I'd like to just go and poll the audience, like, have any of you ever spent a night in a jail cell? Ever? Like, I guarantee we're going to find none of that. These are well-to-do people from politically connected families who are now controlling the
Black
market.
Black and brown too.
Yeah, right. Sorry, like it does seem like the few Black faces we've seen are well off. It's not the poor Black people that have been really affected by this. No, at least from my observation, anyway.
Yeah, you're observing completely accurately, because it is that. That happened to me actually. On the Colorado Normal. I was the only Latina voice, and then they voted in a guy, Neville Rodriguez, who was an attorney working with Rachel Gillette. And when they voted him in, the next thing you know, I wasn't being invited to talk to lawmakers about social equity. He was. They were like, "Oh, Larissa," sorry, I got ashes on my finger. They're like, "Oh, Larissa, first of all, anger doesn't get anybody anywhere." So yes, they gaslit me. And then they were like, "You'll be around during the implementation. Don't worry." And I'm like, I have a master's in public. I have a right to sit with lawmakers. And
not that you need a fucking master's in public policy. But like
No, no, you
also
don't.
like
Poor people like me do, because we don't have the political connections.
right,
Just
right.
because my name is Bolivar doesn't mean that I have political connections. My family is so afraid. We were targeted in the drug war. We don't have, that's a misnomer. Some people, like I've read, when I meet, like especially attorneys, wealthy attorneys, they're like, oh, Bolivar. And they just start seeing dollar signs, literally. And I get so turned off. Like, no, Bolivar, as in I sponsored some of my fucking family to move over here myself. That's Bolivar, not, we're rolling in the dough. We're broke. I mean, like, what the hell? Like, it's just so, this country is so greedy. But yes, the people that are controlling the narrative for social equity are all privileged people who are politically connected or attorneys. And this is by design. Some of them even work for Vicente Cedarberg. I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying this. People get so mad at me, but I tried questioning Shailene's title. And when I started sending, texting and including her in text, she blocked me.
That's a Parabola Center in Massachusetts or something.
Yeah, the Parabola Center. And then she was one of the first commissioners for the Massachusetts Control Board, the commission.
Okay.
The Cannabis Control Commission. Which Vicente Cedarberg helped set up. So a lot of people helped set up.
Shit.
And yeah, so there's the gentleman Grant that works there. I like him. He seems,
Grant Ellis.
With the Boston Freedom Rally.
I've spoken to Grant.
He works at Parabola now with Shailene, and I asked him if he could help build a bridge between me and her, because I'm trying to understand who she is and where she comes from and her background.
Grant seems like a reasonable
Indians
guy.
aren't targeted in the drug war in the United States. Now cannabis grows in Asia, and they certainly have a right to it historically as a sacred plant medicine. However, when you're talking social equity, drug war policy, and reparations, which is what it is at the end of the day, repairing harm, then it should be people from those communities making those decisions, because we know what's best for ourselves. We don't need people sitting in ivory towers telling us what's best for us.
Right.
That's patronizing.
And a lot of law enforcement, I've noticed, has weaseled their way into these proceedings. Like state troopers, we got judges, a lot of lawyers, and the same people that really created these laws that have fucked everyone are now suddenly carving out the new market that's supposed to help us. And to me, that feels incredibly disingenuous at best.
Yes, it is. And it's all just so that, it's just this regulatory capture game. Really, at the end of the day, they're all standing in line with their goody little hands out. What can I get from this? What can I get from this? And everybody else has been forgotten. We're on, there's a saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Well, we're all on the menu. And I tried getting a seat at the table, but I've never
heard that, Larissa. I like that.
It's a good one. Mark Slaw is the one who always reminds me that, and that's,
he sent me his number. I hope you can connect us after this.
Yeah, I will.
I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, he's been helping, he's a counterforce in social equity policy right now, helping to make sure, he's much more diplomatic than I am, put it that way. I am an activist, and but somehow in this age of everybody gets a trophy, where everybody's sensitive, actual activism comes across as bullying. No, it's not. We're just not going to back down. I don't care what that makes me look. I'm not showing up at your door threatening to beat you up, but I'm not going to be quiet.
Well, to me, the bullies are the ones writing the policy that are drowning all these voices out.
100%. 100%. That's what it is. But, in psychology, which I have a bachelor's in psychology, that's, called, there's different.
Well, it's the best thing you can do is you accuse the opposition of the exact same thing you're doing.
Look over here. We're going to do this.
That's classic. That's classic bullshit.
Deflection, whatever you want to call it. That's exactly what they're doing. It's a smoke screen, and they're just trying while they transfer wealth from the middle and lower classes, which has been that's a trend. That's an American trend right now. It's not just cannabis, but in cannabis, you can really see it play out because it's such a new industry.
Right.
So,
and it's right in the forefront right now. So everyone's looking.
Yeah. And so it's easier to call people like me crazy, bully, conspiracy theorists, this and that. Go talk to one of my professors if you really feel that way about me. Don't just spread rumors and slander me. They didn't give me the grades they did because I was being a terrible student. And so, but again, in a world where I was accused of having to sleep with certain people to even have legitimacy, the attorney they accused me of sleeping with, he was my legal advisor for the Colorado Compassion Club that I started with my ex-husband. This guy, he's a womanizer. He's a known womanizer. He flirts with everybody, but that doesn't mean that everybody's sleeping with him just to get a leg up, no pun intended, in the industry.
Hey.
I was already relevant. I was way relevant. I didn't need him to put me on the map. I needed him to help keep us alive. And then the guy starts flirting with me and, partying with my ex-husband. He's literally like, I call him, the better call Saul. Like I call him the Saul Goodman of weed, Robert Corey Jr. Like, God bless him. He went off the deep end, but, at the same time, and I feel like he might've been bamboozled too in a way, but, he let his ego get the best of him. And I would tell him this to his face, he let his ego get the best of him, but, he helped write Amendment 64. And he recently wrote an article in the Gazette saying that he had regrets of helping, essentially colonize. I don't think he used that word, but that's the word, I use that mark, coin, the cannabis colonization. But, he helped lead the takeover. But, what's not being mentioned is his wife. I wrote a blog about this where everybody's like, oh, she sounds, like a conspiracy theorist. But a lot of people are like, oh, wow, that makes sense. I wrote a blog about the early, about the corruption in Colorado and how intertwined it was. But Rob Corey's ex-wife, Jessica Peck, who used to be Jessica Peck Corey, was a huge voice. She started the Moms for Marijuana, or Republican Moms for Marijuana. And she was a Republican, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Republican who used to run an anti-affirmative action campaign. And she used to run campaigns to get state funding out of diversity training. Yes, very racist. She even had a racist cookie bake sale at University of Boulder, which is, University of Boulder has a long history of marijuana legalization. That's why these people have relevancy. But she worked with Wanda James and Sean Coleman and other lobbyists. All these people in Colorado, they're all rich lobbyists, politically driven people. They're driven more to be political than they are for social justice. For them, it's their career or their personal career versus a movement, right? That's the disconnect. But Jessica Peck was Rob's wife at the time, and she was Marijuana Policy Project's lobbyist. She was helping them devise the strategy for Amendment 64. And so she was the one who was helping get all of the optics done to get people like me out of the way.
And I've seen at least since I saw you pulling up some of the campaign contributions from maybe Brian Vicente. I'm not sure who that is from. But I started
Julie
looking.
Gonzalez.
I started looking through the records myself, and I've noticed a lot, at least 5 or 6 lobbyists that they had active in Vermont during the time when they were trying to pass the legislation.
Oh wow!
And it's such a small state, like 5 or 6 lobbyists. Boy, that's a lot in Vermont. It seemed
and they're
like
all tied to Vicente Cederberg some way.
I don't know that. I'm not going to say that at all. They're tied to the Marijuana Policy Project for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's
who they were registered with. And one of them's a big lawyer in Burlington, and the other 4 or 5 I'll text you privately about.
Yeah, it's real interesting because it's basically all the same people. This is like the Marijuana Policy Project, how, there's the Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and it's all this like incestuous, all these nonprofits that are all funded by the elites who wanted to take over. I mean, that's just ultimately what happened, so that way they could, pass laws to benefit the businesses and the venture capitalists that were funding the back end of legalization, which are all these MSOs that you saw emerge. Cresco, that was started in Illinois. ENC in Colorado helped start Cresco through Denver Relief, which was also owned by Kayvon Calabari and a guy named Nick Heisey. But they helped launch Cresco, which has
Kayvon, you said ran for mayor or something, I believe.
Kayvon ran for mayor in Denver, and he left. He now lives in Trinidad. He's, trying to, he's probably do a run there. He's already investing money in the buildings and shit, trying to be a big name. He had a cannabis business that he helped launch in Ohio that he called Standard Cannabis. So we all, like Standard Oil. So we know what his designs are.
Yeah, that's the worst fucking name for a business. Standard Cannabis. Like, yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, my psychology degree, like my whole college education, I didn't go back to school until I was 32, but it's all political science based. And so when I'm watching all this behavior, it's like watching people being stark naked, right? It's like, like, oh my
Well, I
God,
think you
that's
said
why
it.
they're doing
The
it.
emperor has no clothes. I
It's
think you
the
said it
emperor has
earlier.
no clothes. There's a reason for that. Or the emperor's new clothes. That
Right,
fable, there's a
right.
reason, and what we're dealing with now. And so this is why it's all coming to a head now. And the chinks in their armor is the social equity movement that they took over, because now it laid bare all of the inequities. And so when you're looking at all of those inequities, now they have to reputation launder. So that's why you see all of these people that are leading these organizations, that are leading social equity policy, and that are doing, they're holding the rest of us like this back by our heads. Like, no, you're not getting here, and hitting us with elbows and saying, no, we're going to
Like a
control this
tiny
because,
child, stay back.
yeah. I'm short. So, it's easy to do that to
Yeah, you're
me.
5'2". I could do that
Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah. But they have money, so they can do that theoretically to everybody. And lawmakers listen to people who give them the most money and the most votes. So that's just it. And Princeton did a study in the early 2000s, or mid, like 2009, I think it was, or 2007, this time frame. But that designating the United States as an oligarchy, basically saying that individuals, not companies, that are Citizens United said that we're individuals, but actual human breathing, one person, one sexual, one pronoun, unless it's they, who knows, anyhow, one entity, person, us. We have 0% influence on policy. It's not like, and the thing is not enough people are voting. I mean, that it boils down to civic engagement. But when both people are working, you're barely scraping by. There's so much traffic. It's just so hard to even do anything other than survive. That people just stop giving a shit, and so these people take complete advantage, and that's literally what just happened.
Yeah.
Just what happened.
I think that is fucking spot on. Larissa, look, I gotta run some errands here. This has been a fantastic interview. I want to follow up on this because I feel like we could talk for 24 hours straight, maybe. But I want to cut this one here. I always give my guests the last word though, but I want to say thank you for coming on here, and I really hope we can follow this up. Larissa Bolivar from Oklahoma. What was it? The CCC. Tell me your
the Cannabis Consumers Coalition. It's shelved right now. Well, we have a management company. We took over a grow. We're building that. We're gonna buy it. And so I'm just just trying to be really quiet about stuff that I'm doing right now, because I have a lot of people that just hate me. And it's a shame, but I just lost everything because of COVID in Colorado. And we can do another show on that, because that's actually very important.
You're gonna be coming back, hopefully, as a regular correspondent.
Yeah. So, because you're gonna want to hear the social equity story in Colorado.
Cool.
So thank you.
You got anything else for us, Larissa?
No, we're good. I'm good.
Cool.
I just said we, but meaning you and I. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you actually, I want to say thank you for giving me this platform
You're welcome.
we need to fix this. There needs to be a unification between, the green. This is just not the heart of the movement. We need to get back on mission.
Word up. Let's leave it right there. Beautiful ending note.